SEAL Admiral asked a single-dad janitor his call sign as a joke until Lone Eagle made him freeze. "Hey, janitor, what's your call sign?" "Mop man." Laughter filled the Navy cafeteria like a storm. Plates clattered, voices echoed, and men in spotless uniforms grinned at the man in faded overalls, mopping quietly near the door. Marcus Reed didn't even look up. He just kept mopping, slow, steady strokes, his back straight, his expression calm. The one laughing loudest was Admiral Coleman, a tall, white-haired man whose medals gleamed under the harsh lights. He leaned back in his chair and smirked. "Come on, son. You clean up after Navy SEALs every day. You must have picked up a call sign of your own, right?" A few officers chuckled again. The janitor paused for a second. Then, finally, he spoke. His voice was deep, steady, and calm. "I had one once." That made Coleman grin wider. "Oh, really? And what was it?" Marcus looked up, his eyes sharp and serious now. "Lone Eagle." The room went dead quiet. Forks stopped midair. Chairs creaked. Someone dropped a spoon. The Admiral's smirk slowly faded from his face. Coleman's fingers tightened on his coffee cup. "Say that again." Marcus wiped his hands on a rag. "You heard me, sir." The Admiral stared. "That call sign, Lone Eagle, was burned into Navy history. The man who'd gone rogue behind enemy lines to rescue an entire SEAL team after a mission went sideways. The one they said never came back. The legend every soldier whispered about." Coleman's voice dropped. "That was you." Marcus gave a small, tired smile. "Used to be." He nodded politely. "If you'll excuse me, sir, I've got a spill to clean before my shift's over." He turned away and pushed his mop bucket down the hall. No one said a word. The same officers who had laughed now just watched. Quiet, uncomfortable. The Admiral leaned back slowly, trying to process what just happened. "Lone Eagle," he whispered under his breath. "They said he was dead." Later that afternoon, Coleman found Marcus again, sitting outside on the bench behind the building, eating lunch from a paper bag. Coleman sat beside him. "Why didn't you tell anyone who you were?" Marcus didn't look up. "Would it change anything, sir? The rent's still due. My daughter still needs me home at 6. Coleman studied him for a moment, the calm in his eyes, the quiet pain behind his words. "You were a hero, son." Marcus shook his head. "No, sir. Heroes get parades. Men like me, we just clean up afterward." Coleman looked down, guilt heavy in his chest. He'd seen men like this before, men who gave everything and got forgotten when the war ended. As Marcus stood to go, Coleman called out softly, "Why Lone Eagle?" Marcus paused, then glanced back. "Because I always flew alone, sir. Still do." He walked off, leaving the Admiral sitting there, haunted by the truth that the man he'd mocked that morning might be the bravest soldier he'd ever met. "Sir, I checked every SEAL record you asked for, but there's nothing," the aide said, his voice uneasy. Admiral Coleman looked up from his desk. "Nothing? Nothing on a Marcus Reed, nothing on Lone Eagle. It's like he never existed." Coleman frowned. "That's impossible. I served during that time. I remember the operation, Iron Shield. Half the base still talks about it." The aide swallowed. "Sir, those files are redacted under top-secret clearance, eyes only. Even your level doesn't open them." Coleman leaned back, his face tight. Why would a janitor's file be locked tighter than an active operation? Later that evening, the Admiral found Marcus again, sitting quietly on the same bench behind the cafeteria. His lunch pail was beside him, untouched. He was watching the sunset fade across the base, quiet, distant. Coleman sat next to him. "You know, I tried to look you up." Marcus chuckled softly without turning. "Bet you didn't find much." Coleman sighed. "They wiped your name clean. That doesn't happen by accident." Marcus finally looked at him. His eyes were tired, the kind of tired that came from memories you can't sleep through. "Sir," he said quietly, "some missions don't end on the battlefield. They end when the truth dies." Coleman tilted his head. "Then tell me your truth." Marcus took a long breath. "We were sent into the mountains overseas. 6 men. Mission was to extract a captured intel officer. We got ambushed. It was a setup from the start. My team, they didn't make it out. Coleman stayed silent, letting him talk. I was the only one left. Radio was down. I carried 2 men for miles before they died in my arms. When I reached the extraction point, Command said to stand down. Mission compromised. But I couldn't. There was still 1 man alive out there. He stopped, his voice cracking. So I went back. Coleman's eyes widened. Alone? Marcus nodded. That's how I got the name. Lone Eagle. I brought him home, but I disobeyed orders doing it. Next morning, they called it insubordination. I called it doing what was right. The Admiral sat there, speechless. Marcus smiled faintly. You asked why I never told anyone. Because in the Navy, medals make men famous, but mistakes make ghosts. Coleman stared at the ground. You weren't a mistake, Reed. You were a soldier who did what Command should have done. Marcus stood, picking up his lunch pail. Doesn't matter now, sir. The uniform's gone. The war's over. Coleman rose too. Maybe the war's over, son. But the truth isn't. As Marcus walked away, the Admiral pulled out his phone. Get me access to Operation Iron Shield, he said quietly. Now. Because deep down, Coleman knew, men like Marcus didn't just disappear. They were buried, and this time, he was going to dig him back out. Sir, I shouldn't be showing you this. The young intelligence officer's hands shook as he slid a thick black folder across Admiral Coleman's desk. Coleman gave him a hard look. You didn't see me open it, and I didn't see you bring it. The officer nodded and slipped out, closing the door behind him. Coleman took a deep breath and flipped the folder open. The first page hit him like a punch to the chest. Operation Iron Shield. Commander Marcus Reed. Call sign Lone Eagle. His eyes scanned the lines. Commendations, successful missions, detailed reports. Then came the incident report. The red ink across the top read, Mission compromised. Classified casualties. Termination of active status. Dishonorable discharge. Coleman's jaw tightened. Dishonorable, he muttered. For saving lives? He kept reading. The deeper he went, the worse it got. Testimonies redacted. Coordinates blacked out. One note scribbled in the margin. Subject disobeyed direct order. Collateral death resulted in political cover-up. Coleman slammed the file shut. Political cover-up, he whispered. They sacrificed him to protect themselves. That evening, Coleman found Marcus again, this time in the maintenance hall, fixing a broken sink. Marcus, Coleman said, stepping in, I saw your file. Marcus froze. The wrench in his hand stopped turning. Sir, he said quietly, that file's supposed to stay buried. Coleman crossed his arms. You were punished for saving your men. They made you the villain to keep the brass clean. Marcus sighed, wiping his hands on a rag. It's done, Admiral. I made peace with it. Peace? Coleman's voice cracked. They destroyed your name. You disappeared. You think that's peace? Marcus met his eyes, steady, calm. Sir, I didn't do what I did for medals. I did it because 6 men were counting on me. I'm still here. They're not. That's enough punishment. Coleman felt his throat tighten. You carried that alone all these years. Marcus nodded slowly. I carry it every day, right next to the picture of my daughter. There was silence for a moment, only the dripping faucet between them. Coleman finally said, You've got a daughter? Marcus smiled faintly. Yeah, she's 12. Smart, loud, stubborn. Reminds me there's still good in this world. Coleman exhaled slowly. She know who you are? Marcus shook his head. She knows who I used to be, but not who they said I was. The Admiral put a hand on his shoulder. Then it's time she, and everyone else, learns the truth. Marcus looked at him, eyes weary but strong. And what truth is that, sir? Coleman stared right back. That a real hero's been cleaning our floors. That night, as Marcus walked home through the quiet streets, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Meet me at Base Conference Room 7 tomorrow. Operation Iron Shield will not stay buried. Marcus stared at the screen, heart pounding. The ghosts of his past weren't done with him yet. You sure you want to do this, sir? Coleman's aide asked quietly as they stood outside the conference room. The Admiral straightened his uniform. It's long overdue. Inside sat the base command board, 3 high-ranking officers, gray hair and medals, cold eyes and stiff backs. The same kind of men who once signed off on Marcus Reed's silence. Coleman stepped forward, a thick folder in his hands. Gentlemen, I'd like to discuss Operation Iron Shield. The room went still. One of the officers, Rear Admiral Parker, raised an eyebrow. That operation is sealed under top secret. Why bring it up now? Coleman met his gaze. Because one of your scapegoats has been mopping my floors for the past 6 years. A murmur spread across the table. Parker leaned back. This isn't a courtroom, Coleman. Whatever soldier you're talking about, that file was closed for national security reasons. Coleman dropped the folder on the table. His name is Marcus Reed. Call sign, Lone Eagle. He saved 5 men on that mission. You buried him to save a politician's career. The men exchanged glances. Parker's tone hardened. Watch yourself, Admiral. Those records are classified for a reason. Coleman slammed a hand on the table. No, they're hidden for a reason. You don't erase a man's name because he refused to leave his brothers behind. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of truth everyone wanted to forget. Finally, Parker sighed. Coleman, you think you're helping him, but some things are better left buried. Coleman stared him down. Maybe for you. Not for him. He turned, grabbing the folder and walking out. Outside, Marcus waited in the hallway, hands in his pockets, calm as always. How'd it go? Coleman looked at him and shook his head. They wanted to keep it quiet. But I'm not done. Marcus gave a soft smile. Sir, I appreciate what you're doing, but it's all right. I made peace with it. Coleman frowned. No, you didn't. You just learned to live with it. That's not peace. That's survival. Marcus sighed, glancing at the flag outside, fluttering in the wind. Sir, the Navy took my name. But they didn't take my soul. That's something they can't write out of a file. Just then, a voice came from behind them. Mr. Reed? They turned. A young officer stood there holding a small package. This was sent to the base for you. No return address. Marcus frowned and took it. Inside was a single dog tag, old and scratched. He turned it over. It wasn't his. It read, Lieutenant Daniel Cross, KIA, saved by Lone Eagle. Marcus froze. His throat tightened. Coleman saw the pain in his eyes. He was one of your men, wasn't he? Marcus nodded slowly. Yeah, he was. He looked back at the horizon. If someone sent this now, it means someone out there still remembers. Coleman placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Then it's time the world remembers too. Marcus stared at the tag for a long moment, the past flickering behind his eyes. The fire, the sand, the screams, the choices. All right then, he whispered. If they want the truth, let's give it to them. You really think they'll let us talk? Marcus's voice was low, calm, but his eyes carried that old soldier's awareness, the kind that sensed danger long before it arrived. Admiral Coleman looked out across the base parking lot. They can't stop the truth forever. Marcus gave a small, tired laugh. Sir, I've been living proof that they can. Coleman turned toward him. Not anymore. You saved men who were written off as dead. You carried the Navy's honor when the Navy forgot you. That story deserves daylight. Marcus studied him, then nodded. All right, if we do this, we do it right. My daughter comes first. I won't let her get dragged into this. Understood, Coleman said. We'll protect her. And your name. That night, Coleman called an old friend, a journalist named Evelyn Carter, a retired war reporter who had seen more truth buried than published. Evelyn, he said over the phone, I've got a story, but it's not about war. It's about what happens when the heroes come home and nobody's there to salute. Her voice sharpened. You're talking about Marcus Reed, aren't you? Coleman froze. You know him? I embedded with his unit in Iraq, she said quietly. They called him Lone Eagle because when everything went wrong, he always came back alone. Coleman took a breath. He's here, working as a janitor. The Navy erased his file, silence. Then Evelyn said softly, "Send me everything you have. I'll make the world remember him." 2 days later, the story was ready. The Forgotten Seal: How the Navy Buried Its Own Hero. It was scheduled to air that Sunday. But early that morning, Coleman's office phone rang. "Admiral Coleman, this is Rear Admiral Parker. You are ordered to stand down immediately. No interviews, no press." Coleman's jaw tightened. "You can't bury this again." Parker's voice hardened. "You're putting national security at risk." Coleman snapped back. "No, sir. I'm protecting it. Because a country that hides its heroes isn't worth defending." He hung up the phone and walked out, adrenaline pounding. Meanwhile, Marcus was at home, packing his daughter's school lunch. She giggled, holding up one of his medals she found in a drawer. "Daddy, was this yours?" He smiled. "It was. But medals don't make heroes, baby. Doing what's right does." She hugged him tight. "You're my hero, Daddy." Those words hit him harder than any medal ever had. Later that afternoon, Marcus and Coleman met with Evelyn at a quiet diner near the base. The cameras weren't rolling yet. Just 3 people sitting at a booth, sharing the weight of one man's truth. Evelyn pressed record. "Tell me what really happened that night, Marcus." He took a slow breath. "I'll tell you everything. But understand something. This isn't about me. It's about every soldier who gave more than they got back." He looked at Coleman, then at the reporter. "They took my name. But they didn't take my story." And for the first time in years, Marcus Reed, Lone Eagle, began to speak. "And that's when I carried him out, even though command told me to leave him." Marcus's voice trembled slightly as he spoke into the camera. The diner was silent, the air heavy with truth. Evelyn Carter leaned forward, her expression gentle. "And when you came home?" Marcus gave a small, sad smile. "I came home to paperwork that said dishonorable." To silence. "To empty chairs where my brothers should have been." He looked up, eyes glistening. "So I stopped fighting. I hung up the uniform, started mopping floors. Figured if the world forgot me, maybe that's how it was meant to be." Evelyn's voice softened. "Why speak now?" Marcus hesitated, then whispered, "Because my daughter asked me once what being brave means. I realized I couldn't teach her courage if I was still hiding." The interview aired 2 days later. By dawn, it had gone viral. Lone Eagle trended across every social platform. Clips of Marcus's quiet words flooded timelines. His pain, his humility, his truth. People wrote messages. Respect to this brother. He carried honor when the system didn't. Give that man his name back. In less than 24 hours, news vans lined up outside the Navy base. Inside, chaos erupted. Rear Admiral Parker stormed into Coleman's office. "What have you done?" Coleman stood tall. "I told the truth. You broke protocol. You embarrassed the Navy." Coleman's tone sharpened. "No, sir. You embarrassed the Navy when you buried him alive." Parker's face turned red. "This will cost you your career." Coleman didn't flinch. "Then I'll lose mine standing beside a man who earned his." Meanwhile, Marcus tried to go about his day as usual. But wherever he went, people stopped him. Base workers shook his hand. Veterans saluted him. One old Marine whispered, "You brought honor back, son." Marcus just nodded, humbled. "I was just doing what needed to be done." That night, he sat at his kitchen table with his daughter. She was scrolling through her phone, eyes wide. "Daddy, they're all talking about you." He smiled softly. "Let them talk, baby. Just remember, fame fades, but character don't." She grinned. "Can I tell my friends my dad's a hero?" Marcus chuckled, eyes misty. "Only if you tell them being a hero just means doing the right thing when it's hard." Back on base, Admiral Coleman received an urgent call from Washington. "Admiral Coleman, this is the Pentagon. The Secretary wants to meet with both you and Marcus Reed tomorrow morning. They've decided to reopen Operation Iron Shield." Coleman exhaled. "About time." He looked out the window toward the chapel across the base, where Marcus was finishing his janitor shift in the quiet. The same man who'd walked in invisible was now shaking the whole system awake. Coleman whispered to himself, You didn't just clean floors, Lone Eagle. You cleaned the truth. Mr. Reed, the secretary will see you now." The guard's voice echoed through the marble hallway. Marcus stood in a clean navy blue suit, borrowed from Admiral Coleman. His posture straight, his face calm. But his hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his tie. Coleman patted his shoulder. "You ready, Lone Eagle?" Marcus gave a faint smile. "Haven't heard that name in a long time," Coleman grinned. "Then it's about time someone said it with respect." The massive wooden doors opened. Inside, the Navy board sat around a long table. Medals gleaming, papers stacked, cameras rolling. Reporters filled the back rows, eager for the story that had shaken the country. At the head sat Secretary of the Navy Marlowe, a stern woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. "Mr. Reed," she said, "please have a seat." Marcus sat, his back straight. Coleman stood beside him, silent but steady. Marlowe began, "We've reviewed your case. We've seen the interview, the old records, the testimonies. I need to ask you, why didn't you fight the dishonorable discharge?" Marcus looked her in the eye. "Ma'am, I fought wars on 2 continents. I didn't have the strength left to fight one at home." A murmur rippled through the room. Marlowe leaned forward. "They said you disobeyed a direct order." "Yes, ma'am," Marcus said calmly. "An order to leave my team behind. I made a choice I could live with, even if it meant losing everything else." Coleman's voice broke in, firm. He didn't disobey. He refused to abandon American soldiers. "If that's a crime, then half our medals don't mean a thing." The board went silent. The secretary looked down at the dog tag lying on the table, the one that read Lieutenant Daniel Cross, saved by Lone Eagle. She touched it softly. "He was the last man you brought home, wasn't he?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I promised his mother I'd bring him back. Took me 3 days, 2 bullets, and a whole lot of prayer. But I did it." The secretary's voice softened. "And what did you get in return?" Marcus smiled faintly. "A mop and a paycheck. But I also got my daughter's smile every morning. That's enough." For a long moment, no one spoke. The room felt heavy, not with shame, but with respect. Finally, the secretary stood. "Mr. Reed, on behalf of the United States Navy, I'd like to apologize." Marcus blinked, stunned. She continued, "Your record will be corrected immediately. You are hereby reinstated to honorable status with full recognition of your service. And we'd like to present you with the Navy Cross for valor beyond duty." The room erupted in applause. Coleman smiled proudly, eyes misty. "Told you the truth wins in the end." Marcus stood slowly, taking the medal in shaking hands. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "thank you. But I didn't do any of this for medals." The secretary smiled softly. "We know. That's why you deserve it." As cameras flashed, Marcus looked out over the crowd. He spotted one face in the back. His daughter, standing on her tiptoes, waving proudly. He smiled, tears blurring his vision. "Guess I can finally tell her what being brave really means." "Daddy, is that really yours?" The little girl's eyes sparkled as she pointed to the Navy Cross glistening under the living room light. Marcus smiled, kneeling down beside her. "Yeah, baby. They said it's for bravery," she giggled softly. "But you already had that." Marcus's chest tightened. He hugged her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, that simple, ordinary smell that reminded him why he fought so hard to live. Admiral Coleman stood by the doorway, smiling. "She's right, you know. That medal just caught up with what you already were," Marcus chuckled. "Feels strange, sir." "Being seen again," Coleman nodded. "Sometimes heroes don't need to be found. They just need someone to look long enough." 2 weeks later, the base hosted a small ceremony. It wasn't grand, but it was honest. Men and women who once looked past Marcus now stood shoulder to shoulder, clapping as he walked up to the podium in a clean Navy suit, not as a janitor, but as Chief Marcus Reed, retired U.S. Navy SEAL. The flag fluttered softly behind him. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned in. But Marcus wasn't thinking about any of that. His eyes found his daughter sitting in the front row, swinging her legs. Smiling, he cleared his throat and spoke into the microphone, his voice strong but humble. For a long time, I thought the world forgot about me. Turns out, I was the one who forgot what really mattered. I used to think being a SEAL was about medals, missions, and orders. But now I know. It's about people, the ones who stand by you, even when no one else does. He paused, glancing at Coleman, who stood proud in the crowd. I spent years cleaning floors, but maybe that's what I needed. To remember what humility feels like. If this medal means anything, it's not mine alone. It belongs to every soldier who came home invisible, and every soul still fighting to be seen. The room fell silent, every word landing like truth. Then applause erupted. Deep, loud, endless. Later that evening, Marcus and his daughter walked to the memorial wall outside the base. He placed a small photo, his old SEAL team, beneath the words, "In memory of the fallen." His daughter looked up. "Do you miss them, Daddy?" Marcus smiled gently. "Every day, but I carry them with me, just like they carried me." She squeezed his hand. "You're not alone anymore." He looked down at her, eyes soft. "No, baby, not anymore." As they walked away, the wind caught his jacket, revealing the name tag stitched neatly above his heart. Marcus Reed. Lone Eagle. And for the first time in years, he didn't hide it. He wore it with pride. The same man who once mopped the floors now walked tall. Not as a forgotten soldier, but as a living lesson. You don't need a uniform to serve, or medals to matter. Sometimes, the bravest battles are the ones no one ever sees. Morale of the story. Never judge a man by the work he does. Judge him by the heart he carries. Because real heroes don't shine for glory. They shine for love, duty, and redemption.